While I was fighting ovarian cancer, my mother and sister told everyone they were saving me. Then they invited me to a small family dinner. Instead, I walked into a ballroom covered with private treatment photos and found my sister selling my pottery as her own. I turned over one bowl. My mark was underneath. But the stolen work was not the worst betrayal. My name is Sadie Pickford. I'm 33 years old, and 3 years ago, a doctor told me there was a good chance I would not see 31. I did. I'm still here, and I want to tell you what my family did with the year they thought was going to be my last. Welcome back to Rose Untold Stories. This is where people whose pain was taken, rewritten, and used by someone else finally get to tell their own side. Tell me where you're listening from tonight, and whether anyone has ever tried to tell your story as if it belonged to them. I'm a potter. I work in clay. For 10 years, I had a small studio of my own. My wheel, my kiln, shelves full of glazes I mixed myself, and my name above a door that was not much bigger than a garage. It was not impressive from the outside, but it was mine. Then I got sick. Ovarian cancer. The kind that does not knock politely before entering your life. I spent months away from the wheel. Customers stopped calling. Orders were canceled. The rent kept coming, even when I could barely stand long enough to make coffee. Eventually, I lost the studio. By the time I was strong enough to think about clay again, the door with my name above it belonged to someone else. I am rebuilding now. Slowly. A rented corner, a second-hand wheel, and one kiln I bought on payments. I am not trying to get my old life back. You cannot unfire a piece of pottery. Once it has gone through the heat, it becomes something new. So did I. But losing the studio is not why my family became part of this story. My mother is Marlene. My older sister is Corinne. Throughout my treatment, the two of them told everyone who would listen that they were the ones holding me together. I want you to understand how strange that was to hear, because I was there for my own cancer, and they mostly were not. The truth was quieter and much lonelier than their version. I went to most of my chemotherapy appointments with a woman named Inez. She was a nurse on the oncology floor. Older, steady, and completely unimpressed by suffering. She started sitting with me during her breaks. Then she began coming on her days off. And there was Grant, my partner. Grant is not a loud man. He did not post about my illness or tell people how brave he was being. He drove me home after surgery, slept in a chair beside me, and learned how to change my dressings without making a face. When I could not eat, he kept trying until he found 3 things my body would accept. Those 2 were there. My family mostly talked about being there. My mother came to exactly 2 chemotherapy appointments during my entire treatment. I am not guessing at that number. I counted. 2. Both times, she spent more time looking at her phone than looking at me. But if you heard Marlene speak at church, at the salon, or anywhere she had an audience, she was the devoted mother carrying her daughter through the darkest year of her life. Corinne turned the story into something even bigger. It began with a few social media posts. A photograph of her holding my hand, a caption about putting her own life on pause, a long post about the strength it took to care for a sick younger sister. Then came more posts. Then followers. Then invitations to speak at small events for caregivers and families dealing with serious illness. Brands began sending her products. People thanked her for being honest. Women wrote to her asking how she stayed so strong while looking after me. She had built an entire identity around being the sister who saved my life. The problem was that I did not recognize the life she was describing. I knew about the posts. I let them go. I was focused on making it through treatment, and then I was busy learning how to live again. Starting a fight over my sister's social media was nowhere near the top of my list. I told myself it was harmless. I told myself she probably meant well underneath it. I told myself people cope in different ways. Standing at my little rented wheel, I told myself many things that I would soon stop being able to believe. Because clay remembers everything. Every place your hand pressed too hard, every wobble you tried to smooth away. It may disappear while the clay is wet, but the heat brings it back. Families are like that too. What you press down does not vanish. It waits for heat. Several months into my remission, my mother called me. She sounded warm in a way she was not usually warm. She said she and Corinne wanted to do something for me. Nothing large, she promised. Just a small dinner with a few close friends to celebrate my recovery. She said I deserved it. Then she added that the year had been difficult for all of us. I almost said no. Something inside me, the part that had become very good at reading doctors' faces before they spoke, went quiet and careful. But my mother sounded sincere. And I was tired of being the difficult daughter. Tired of being called ungrateful. Tired of hearing that I did not know how to let my family love me. So I said yes. I should have listened to the part of me that wanted to say no. It had kept me alive once already. I knew something was wrong the moment I saw the parking lot. A small dinner with a few close friends does not fill a parking lot. This was a banquet hall, the big one on the north side, and there were valets and a sign out front with my name on it. Under my name it said, "An Evening for Women's Health." I sat in Grant's car and looked at that sign for a long moment. Grant looked at it too. He did not say anything. He simply reached over and put his hand on mine, which is his way of asking whether I want to leave. I did not leave. I want to tell you why, because it matters for everything that came after. I had spent a year having things done to my body without my permission. Needles, scans, surgeries. And I had learned that the only power you get back is the power to walk in with your eyes open. So I walked in with my eyes open. Inside was worse than the sign. They had put my cancer on the walls. Photographs blown up huge and lit like art. Me in a hospital bed, asleep, my mouth open, a tube in my arm. Me with my head newly bald, photographed during a moment when I did not even know there was a camera in the room. Private pictures. The worst days of my life, printed 4 feet tall and hung on a wall for strangers to sip wine in front of. I found out later that my mother had taken most of them. During the 2 visits she made, that was what she had been doing on her phone. There was a stage, there was a screen. And there was my sister Corinne, wearing a beautiful dress and working the room as though the night belonged to her. Because in her mind it did. She saw me, and her face did something I will never forget. It lit up, but not with love. It lit up the way a performer's face lights up when the prop arrives. She guided me to a seat near the front. She squeezed my hand for the people watching. Then she went up on that stage, took a microphone, and began telling a room full of hundreds of strangers the story of how she saved my life. She said she had kept my studio running while I was sick. She said she had handled my customers, kept the lights on, and held my whole world together so it would be waiting for me when I got well. I want to be plain about something. My sister never had a key to my studio, not once. She had never thrown a pot in her life. She did not know a bisque firing from a glaze firing. Every word of it was invented. And she said it with tears in her eyes, and the room believed her because why would a woman lie about a thing like that? But she did have my work, and I need to tell you how, because it is the part that took me the longest to understand. When I became too sick to keep the studio open, when the closing was happening and I could barely get out of bed, my mother and Corinne offered to handle it for me. They said they would clear the place out, move everything into a storage unit, and keep it safe until I was well enough to start again. I was grateful. I actually cried because I was so grateful. I did not have the strength to pack up 10 years of my life. So I handed them the last of it. Every piece I had made, including the ones from my sick months, went into boxes that they carried away while I slept. I know now that Corinne went through those boxes before they ever reached storage. She pulled out the pieces that would sell. And I never noticed, because I was focused on surviving. Because it does not occur to you to count your own pottery when your family says they are keeping it safe. Then the waiters began moving between the tables with trays. On those trays were small ceramic pieces for sale. A card on each table said they were inspired by SADIE'S journey to healing, with the proceeds going to the foundation. I picked one up. I want to tell you exactly what that felt like, because it was the moment the entire night turned. The piece in my hand was a small glazed bowl, and my hands knew it before my mind did. That is the thing about making something 10,000 times. Your hands hold the memory in a place deeper than thought. I felt the weight of it settle into my palm, and something inside me went cold before I even understood why. The blue was a blue I mixed myself, using a formula I had never written down for anyone. It was a little grayer than the glazes you could buy. The curve of the lip was the curve my own thumb made. And so I did the thing every potter does without thinking, the thing you do 1,000 times a day in your own studio. I turned it over. Because the truth of a piece is always on the bottom. And there was my mark. Not a copy of my mark. My mark. The little press symbol I had signed my work with since I was 19, since art school. Since before Corinne ever pretended to care what I did with my hands. It was a piece I had made on one of the few mornings when treatment left me strong enough to stand at my wheel for an hour. Because making things was the only way I knew to remain a person while my body tried to quit. Corinne had taken them. My work, made during the hardest year of my life, and she was selling it in a ballroom under a card that said she had been inspired by me. I sat there holding my own bowl, while my sister told 400 people that she had designed the collection for her seriously ill sister. I did not scream. I want you to know that it was not because I am serene. It was because I had spent months sitting in a treatment chair with a drip in my arm, making peace with the possibility that I might not make it through. Once you have done that, a woman in a nice dress lying into a microphone becomes a very small thing. She could not frighten me. Nothing in that room could frighten me. That was the one gift cancer gave me. And my sister was about to discover what it was worth. I stood up. I walked toward the stage. People thought it was part of the show. The brave survivor coming forward to embrace her devoted sister. A warm, expectant sound moved through the room. I reached Corinne. I did not embrace her. I took the microphone out of her hand, not roughly. I simply took it the way you take back something that belongs to you. Then I held up the bowl. I turned it over so the large screen behind us could capture the bottom. In a voice that did not shake, I asked everyone to look at the mark beneath it. I told them it was the mark one had signed my pottery with since I was 19 years old. Then I told them I had made the bowl myself during the months one was receiving chemotherapy. During the year my sister had just claimed she spent saving me. The room went very quiet. I looked at Corinne and said the only sentence I needed. My sister did not put her life on hold for me. She built a life out of me. I said it without raising my voice. The quiet was doing all the work. Then I told them the rest, plainly. I told them my sister had never had a key to my studio. I told them the woman who had actually sat with me through chemotherapy was a nurse named Inez, who did not appear in a single photograph on those walls. I told them every piece on every table had been made by me and was being sold without my knowledge or permission. And this was not simply my word against hers. Every piece in that room could be matched to my dated sketches, my studio photographs, and the inventory records I had kept for years. I did not need a single slide. Standing there with my own bowl and my own mark, the proof was already in my hand. My mother came out of the audience then. Fast. Furious. Her public face was cracking. She reached the stage, grabbed the microphone stand, and told me, loud enough for the front tables to hear, that I was tearing the family apart in front of everyone. I looked at her. My mother, who had attended 2 appointments during my entire treatment and used them to photograph me sleeping. Then I told her the truth had not torn this family apart. Hiding it had. I told her I was not finished, but the rest was not for a ballroom. I placed the bowl carefully on the stage. It was a good bowl. I do not break my own work. Then I walked out. Grant was already standing. He already had my coat. He was already waiting by the door, the way he has been at every door I have ever needed to walk out of. Behind me, I could hear the low roar a crowd makes when the story they paid for turns out to be a different story. Corinne was still standing there with empty hands. For the first time since my illness began, she had a microphone within reach and no way to control what the room believed. I later learned that the gallery representative who had come to offer Corinne a licensing deal left before dessert. The editor working on her book was gone by the time the valets brought the cars around. But none of that was the part that broke me. I did not learn that part until the following morning. And it had nothing to do with money, clay, or my sister. It had to do with a genetic report my mother had known about for years and never told me about. The morning after the gala, Grant and I sat at the kitchen table with everything spread out in front of us. And we began pulling the thread. I need to tell you about my father first, because he is how everything unraveled. His name is Roland. He left when I was small. I grew up with my mother's version of him, which was that he was a man who abandoned his daughters and never looked back. I believed it. When you are a child, you believe the parent who stayed. Roland reached out after the gala. Someone had filmed part of it on a phone, and the video had traveled the way these things do. Eventually, it reached him. He called me. He was quiet for a long time. Then he told me something that rearranged my entire childhood. He had been sending money, every month, without fail, for my treatment and my studio. My mother had told him I was drowning, that I could not make my payments, and that I was too proud to ask for help. I never saw $1 of it. Not one. I lost my studio to unpaid bills while my father was wiring money every month to save it. He came to see me. He did not come empty-handed, and he did not come making excuses. He brought a folder, bank records. Every transfer, dated. Messages between him and my mother, in which she thanked him, told him I was doing a little better that month, and kept the story going so the money would continue coming. He placed the folder on my table. He did not open it for me. He did not walk me through it or try to soften what was inside. He simply said everything was there and that I could read it in my own time. He was not going to stand over me while I did. Then he said the only thing he had come to say. He was not asking me to forgive him for being gone. He simply could not let me continue believing that no one had tried. I am not going to tell you we fell into each other's arms. We did not. More than 20 years cannot be erased by a folder. But he gave me the truth without editing it to make himself look better. That was more than the parent who raised me had ever done. It became the beginning of something careful between us. And it was inside that folder that I found the thing that felt worse than the money. Near the end of my sick year, my mother had asked Roland for more. The amounts had kept increasing, so he gently asked what the money was going toward. She sent him proof. Medical paperwork meant to show that the treatment and expenses were real. And she had become careless in the way people do when they are certain no one is really looking. The document ran several pages. She never checked the final one. On that last page was something that had nothing to do with the expenses she was claiming. It was a copy of a genetic counseling report, years old, from long before I ever got sick. I am not going to pretend I understood every medical term written on those pages. What I understood was simple enough. The report showed that there was a hereditary health risk on my mother's side of the families. My mother had known about it for years, and she had never told me. Knowing would not have guaranteed that anything turned out differently. I cannot honestly say it would have prevented my illness or changed the outcome. But I could have taken that information to my doctors. I could have asked questions. I could have discussed my family history with people qualified to explain it. I could have made decisions about my own health with all the information that belonged to me. That opportunity was what she had taken. Not a guarantee. Not a cure. The right to know what existed in my own family and decide for myself what to do with that knowledge. I sat at the kitchen table staring at the report and understood why the betrayal felt so different from the stolen money or the pottery. Those things had been taken from my life. This had been hidden inside it. And the same document my mother had sent to convince Roland to give her more money was the document that finally exposed her. I drove to her house and asked why she had never told me. She did not deny knowing. She said she did not want anyone blaming her side of the family. She said she had spent years trying not to think about it and believed telling me would only make me afraid. Then she said she had been trying to protect me, but she had not protected me. She had protected herself from an uncomfortable conversation and made the decision for me. Corinne knew too. She had seen the report after my diagnosis and understood that it contained information I had never been given. But by then, her public identity had been built around my mother's version of our family. Telling me the truth would have exposed both of them. So she stayed silent. My sister chose the story that protected her career over giving me information about my own health. I wish I could say uncovering it felt like winning. It did not. The gala had felt like a victory for about an hour. This felt like learning that the people who claimed to speak for me had decided I was not even entitled to know the full truth about myself. Here is what I did. And here's what I did not do. I did not post any of it online. I know that is what people expect now, the public burning. But I had already said what needed to be said in the ballroom, to the only room that mattered. I did not need a second stage. My attorney had the foundation account frozen. After the review, the remaining money was transferred to a real organization that helps women understand hereditary health risks, access qualified medical guidance, and make informed decisions about their own care. I legally stopped the sale of my work. I stopped the use of my images and medical information. The book quietly died. The brand deals disappeared. The foundation closed before Corinne could turn it into the platform she had planned. I did not do those things to punish anyone. I did them because those things were mine to take back. But I will tell you something plainly, because this channel is a place for plain things. When Corinne's career came apart and my mother lost the shining place she once occupied in every room, I did not feel one flicker of guilt. Those were not punishments I handed out. That was simply the shape of the ground after the lie stopped holding it up. The thing I keep returning to is not the money, it is not even the stolen work. It is that my mother spent my entire life telling a story about who was there for me and who was not. Who loved the family and who threatened it. And the entire time, the person threatening the family was the one hiding the truth. The people being cast out, my father, and eventually me, were the only ones telling it. Now let me tell you how it actually ends. Because it does not end in a courtroom or a comment section. I reopened my studio. It was small, like everything is now. But it was mine. And I held my first show. I did not display the pieces from my sick year, the ones Corinne had stolen and sold. I could have. But I did not want my first show back to be about her, the cancer, or any of it. I made an entirely new collection, new year, new fire. I called the show mine. Opening night was busier than I expected. Grant stood near the door, welcoming everyone as though they had been part of the studio for years. Roland came too. He kept his distance and did not try to force a long conversation. He simply moved slowly through the collection, studying each piece. Before he left, he bought a small bowl. He insisted on paying full price. But the person I had hoped to see most that night was Inez. She appeared in the doorway as the crowd began to thin. The last time I had seen her, she had been wearing scrubs beneath the fluorescent lights of the hospital. That night, she wore a simple dress and carried a small bouquet of flowers. She took her time looking around the studio. Then she picked up one of the bowls from my new collection and turned it over to examine the mark underneath. "You didn't hide your name this time," she said. "I'm never leaving anything of mine unsigned again," I replied. Inez nodded. She did not mention my mother or Corinne. We did not talk about the cancer either. She never claimed she had saved me or reminded me of everything she had done during that year. That was what had always made her different. She said she wanted to buy one of the bowls. I tried to give it to her as a gift, but she refused. "This is what your work is worth," she said, placing the money on the counter. What stayed with me most that night was not the applause, the sales, or even the sight of my name above the door again. It was seeing the woman who had truly been there during the worst year of my life, holding a piece that belonged to my new one. And this time, no one was rewriting her part in the story. "There is one more thing. Then I will let you go. Everything I have told you happened about 2 years ago. The ballroom, the folder on my kitchen table, the report my mother hid. The night I put my own name back above the studio door. A great deal has changed since then. Corinne and I have not spoken. My mother still tells people her version, but I no longer spend my life correcting her. Roland and I speak carefully now. Not often. But honestly. The studio is still small, but it is growing. and every piece that leaves it carries my mark on the bottom. Today, I finally get to share something good. Something I was once afraid I would never be able to say. I am going to have a baby. Grant and I are expecting sometime in the spring. I do not know what parts of my family's history this child may carry, but I know exactly what will never be passed down from me: the silence. When the time comes, my child will know the truth about their own body, early and in the light. No information will be hidden to protect someone else's reputation. No one will teach them that loving a family means surrendering ownership of their own life. My mother tried to make my illness her legacy. My sister tried to make it her career. But today I am standing inside my own studio, with clay beneath my hands, my name above the door, and a new life growing inside me. The story is still mine. It always was. I want to hear from you tonight. Has anyone ever told you that speaking the truth about your own life made you the person who broke the family? Did you say it anyway? Tell me where you are watching from, and tell me your story. I read everyone, and to whoever needed this tonight, the person being spoken for by people who claim to love them, remember this: they can love you and still not own you. Go take back the pen. If this story stayed with you, please like and subscribe. Take care of yourselves.